everyone, my name is Roya, and today I will be wrapping up what I read in the latter half of December. So in the latter half of December, I only finished 3 books. I did read and get a good way through a couple of other books, but I just did not get far enough into them to be able to count them as read by the time I'm filming this, so they're just going to be in my January wrap-up instead. So I have 3 books here to show you guys. 2 of them are young adult, 1 is adult, and sadly none of them are fantasy, but that's really okay. So anyway, the first book that I finished in the latter half of December is The Cat I Never Named by Amra Sabich El Reyes, and this is a memoir, a YA memoir that basically reads like a novel. It's basically an autobiographical novel, essentially, but it's still a memoir, whatever. So anyway, this follows the author's own story, being a teenager living in the war zone in Bosnia, and essentially this book is so good, by the way. I could not put it down, and the fact that it's a true story just made it even better. But even if it hadn't been a true story, even if she had totally given her story to a character or something like that, it would have been almost as equally gripping. But basically it follows her as she first finds this cat, where already like her people in her city are really not doing so great anyway. Like they're not that well off anyway, so of course they're not thinking of taking care of an animal, but the cat basically chooses them. So they're like, they kind of go from being like, do we really want to keep a cat, to being like, oh, she's our cat, basically, pretty quickly. And so then she goes to school the next day, and her half of her classmates seem to be gone. She notices that like a lot of people are gone, and then it turns out that it's all of the Serbs have left the city. So all of the Serb students are gone, and it's only the Muslims who are left, because the Serbs overnight got a memo kind of to get out of the city so that they could then attack everybody who was left, who were basically just going to be the Muslims at that point. And so she's only warned of this once she gets to school, because one Serb teacher actually stayed behind, because he's married to a Muslim, and so he didn't leave. So he shows up at school like normal and tells the students, you guys need to get home right now, because this is what's going to happen. So it's this whole craziness, and the cat ends up actually saving her and saving people in her family multiple times. And there's a lot of hiding in basements for days and all kinds of crazy stuff that it's just unbelievable what she went through. It's basically, it even talks about how school could only meet once a month, really, and they just kind of worked independently in between, just because they didn't want to risk having that many people in one building all at once, just in case a bomb went off, in case it was bombed, because houses, everything were constantly being bombed the whole time. And there's even this like horrible scene where she's crossing a bridge that keeps being bombed, and she sees this girl, after this bomb goes off, she sees this girl who looks completely fine. She looks like she just got knocked out or something, so she goes over to her and starts like shaking her awake. But she turns her over, and there's no front of the girl anymore. She is not only dead, but like the whole front of her is like gone. And from the back, she had looked like she was just sleeping. So it's like this horrifying image, like, wow. And it talks about how all of the supplies that they get, whether it's food, clothes, etc., is all just aid from the US and stuff like that. So the only like notebooks they have very few pages left in them, so they basically have to commit their notes to memory and then erase the page and then take new notes again and then erase the page once they've memorized them. And then it talks about how one kid actually wrote his notes in pen and then went, oops, I shouldn't have done that, so he just starts taking new notes in between the notes in this weird cross-hashed way. So the fact that they are like lacking basic supplies is crazy. The kind of stuff that they go through when they don't have like basic necessities is really sad and really scary. And there are definitely some really, I should warn you guys, there is a very graphic death of a chicken in here. So if you're like me and you don't want to read about animals getting hurt or killed without any kind of warning, I'm just warning you, there is a really sad death of a chicken in it. Seriously cannot recommend this book enough. It really shows what life is like when you're in a war-torn country. And she was only even able to get out of Bosnia because she was like a straight A student. She was like one of the best and brightest there and was able to get a scholarship to go to the US. And so she was able to make it out and get a degree and become a doctor and send money home to her family, all of that other stuff. But the story doesn't really follow her life after she leaves that much. It like kind of touches on it, but mostly it's about her life in Bosnia and all of the crazy stuff that happens to her. And seriously, you guys should seriously read this book. Definitely. So I read Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. This is so Octavia Butler is an author who I have loved everything that I've read by so far, but this book was not quite as good. I just felt like a lot was missing about the world and kind of how it worked, but I definitely still thought that there was I did still give it 4 stars just out of sheer ingenuity, but I felt like it was really more of like a 3.5 star read, whereas the other books of hers that I've read were all like 5 stars. Like I loved all of them. And so I was a little bit sad that I didn't love this one, but I definitely liked, the characters were kind of interesting. There just wasn't a whole lot of depth to them. I really liked the romance. I thought that was really well done. And a lot of it also hit too close to home. I felt like a lot of it really was so similar to what's going on with the pandemic, especially in the US. Like there's literally, it's basically like they are already living in almost a post-apocalyptic society at the point of the beginning of the story, but there's still like an election going on and politicians are talking about now we're going to get people back to work when literally there are people killing each other because they don't have resources. And so it definitely made me think of how right now in the US how politicians are very out of touch with reality, and they're talking about stuff like getting people back to work, like that's going to fix anything. Basically, it really made me think of that. And so I think this was a book that if I had known it was going to be more like so similar to what's actually going on right now. And it's only set like a few years from now, even though it was written forever ago, like in the early 90s, at least. It hit too close to home, and I probably shouldn't have read it right now. But overall, I did like it. I do recommend it, and I do think it's a really good book. And last but definitely not least, I read We Are Not From Here by Jenny Torres Sanchez. This is about 3 kids from Guatemala who are like, 17 and a little bit younger. And they have to leave Guatemala very, very urgently, or they are going to wind up dead, basically. Like, they have a situation in their hometown that basically could have happened to anybody there. It's, like, not great where they are anyway. But all 3 of them end up in basically the same situation, essentially, where they are going to end up dead if they stay any longer, essentially. So they leave, they go through Mexico, and they make it to the US border, and it is a terrifying book. They are going on a really dangerous journey at every corner, and it is terrifying. And they're basically the only like young people by themselves making that journey. For the most part, it's like families or adults who are there, and so they're being told even by like their fellow migrants that they should go back home and recoup and make the journey later, but that's literally not an option for them. They could not possibly stay in their hometown any longer. And so basically, once once the book is over, it still doesn't end on like a good note. It ends on like a they're safe for now, but nothing's really okay yet note, which is the reality for so many people who are trying to leave and take refuge in the U.S., especially. So I think that what this book especially did really well is showing why it was not even remotely an option for them to stay in their own country, which a lot of people I think don't understand when they talk about people who come to the US illegally. But I always try to point out to people like nobody comes to the US because it's nice here or anything. They just come here and because think about it, like if you're if you're an undocumented immigrant, you don't have a lot of options for work or school or anything. Nobody would come and do that if the situation in their own country weren't like dangerous as heck. So I think this book did a really good job of illustrating why people leave their countries and come to the US, because that's so important for more people to understand if anything's going to change, basically. So anyway, those are the books that I read in the latter half of December 2020. This is my last wrap up of 2020. It feels pretty gosh darn good. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you have read any of these books and have any thoughts on them, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!